brains in bikinis. And this is what they did. They took several hundred college men, put their heads in like a brain scan, whether it was a PET scan, MRI, functional MRI, I don't know what it was, but they scanned their brains because now you can actually watch how a person thinks, where the blood and the oxygen flow in the brain. You can see what parts of the brain are thinking and what they're thinking, basically. So they hooked up all these men's brains, and they would show them images very quickly, about like a tenth of a second. They would be shown different things, inanimate objects, women in business attire, other men, crowds of people, all different images, but then they'd also throw in their images of women in bikinis. And they watched the man's brain as it would react in a tenth of a second to all these different images. And they found out that the brain had the most, for a man, had the most, I guess almost just sudden, explosion of energy in the guy's brain was not just where she was wearing a bikini, but the woman with the bikini with her head cropped off the photo. So it was just the body and nothing else created the greatest excitement in the man's brain. They found the part of the brain that was stimulated when he saw a woman in a bikini was the same part of the brain stimulated in a man having to do with tool use. Using a screwdriver, a wrench, a bandsaw, a miter saw, the same part of the brain was stimulated. They found out that the man's part of the brain that was stimulated is the part associated with third-person verbs, meaning with first-person verbs with a bikini, meaning I push, I grab, I handle, where the man is acting upon her. When the woman were dressed modestly in the images, a different part of the brain lit up. It was the part with third-person verbs. She acts, she walks, she does this, meaning she is in control if she's modest. If she is immodest, the part of the man's brain instinctively wanted to act upon her. And so this is not some religious dogma. This is simply what they found in the men's brains. And so when a woman dresses in a way that's revealing too much, she's almost taking away from herself her own independence in the man's brain. They said when a man is looking at the woman in the bikini, a unique phenomenon took place that they said we've seen almost never before, where the part of the brain having to do with intuiting another person's intentions and feelings and emotions was actually shut off. That the man was not at all thinking about her as a human being, but rather as an object, like a tool, the thing to be acted upon. They said we've almost never seen this before in brain research. They said we have seen it before when people's brains react to looking at people who are homeless, where they don't want to have to look at them as a human being and exercise compassion, so they kind of write them off as something they don't want to look at. They said that's about the only other time we've seen the activity in the brain actually get shut off when it comes to looking at another human being as a person and not merely an object. And so to realize, women, when it comes to modesty, this is not some naive, prudish, Victorian idea that your bodies are bad. The idea behind modesty is precisely your body is so good. One teenage girl in Los Angeles once said to me, she said, I really don't want to marry a guy unless he's worthy of my body. And she didn't mean by that she thought she had a perfect figure. She meant by that she knows her dignity. And she will not marry a boy unless he is worthy of this gift of her body. And I told her, I was like, you go, girl. I said, but it's like she got it. She got the point. That the body is veiled. You look in this imagery that I had read from the Song of Solomon, and it says, my sister, she's behind this veil, and it says, a garden locked is my sister, my bride. A garden locked, a fountain sealed. In ancient times, fresh water was scarce, it was hard to come by, so springs would often be locked up and sealed to avoid contamination by strangers, that not anybody could just walk in there and take the fresh water. So the garden where the spring was, or the fountain, was sealed up, so only the person worthy could enter. It's the same thing with the woman's body. The immodesty is almost like taking the seal off of the garden and showing it to anyone. In the Old Testament, you also think about the Holy of Holies. This is the most sacred place for the Israelites, the very presence of God. So how did God reveal himself? Behind a veil, behind another wall. Only one person a year, the high priest, could enter into the Holy of Holies, and only one day of the year could he go there, on the Day of Atonement. Now, it almost sounds like, God, are you trying to hide yourselves from us? Like, if you really want to reveal yourself, why do you hide behind one veil, and another wall, and only one guy can see you once a year? Are you hiding yourself? By being present in the Holy of Holies that way. God isn't hiding himself to us, he's revealing his holiness to us. That only the worthy can enter to see the glory of an unveiled mystery. Same thing with a woman's body. Only the worthy man should be able to be anything. He must prove his worthiness as a husband and then see the glory of the unveiled mystery, the body and the person. And so I think if you really get back to everything the church is trying to say with sexuality and chastity, it's really everything that our human hearts long for. This eternal, self-giving love that reflects the very love of God. And where the devil is going to want to come after us is where we're weakest. I think for the girls, the weakness, the fear that the girls struggle with most, I think is a fear of loneliness, a fear of being alone. And so she wonders, well, there aren't a lot of good guys out there. If I set my standards too high, what guy's ever going to want to come to be with me? Girls, high school girls, all the time come to me, Jason, guys are jerks, guys are pigs, they're dogs, they're giraffes, they're animals. They're all upset, and they say, Jason, what if we do your whole chastity thing? What good guy is going to be there to marry us? Nobody. We're just going to grow old, I'm going to be alone, I'm going to live in an apartment with 12 cats, I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. And the girls just give up hope that love even exists or that decent men are even out there. And if you watch the progression of what happens, it begins with this fear. I don't want to be alone, which is an understandable fear. But what can happen is it can lead to a point of despair. Well, that love I had when I was a 7-year-old girl, a 12-year-old girl, that's not going to happen. It's naive. Those types of fairy tales just don't exist. The standard starts to become lower. She next begins to settle for relationships that she knows. And she knows the depths of her heart. If she has to lower her morals to find love, it's not love that she's finding. But she figures, well, it's better than being alone out there. If I don't have him, who would I have? The standard starts to lower. Then she begins to justify her behavior in her mind. Well, I'm not as bad as those girls over there. It's not like I'm hooking up getting drunk every weekend. I really care about this boy. It doesn't matter if we do this stuff. We'll hopefully end up anyway. The justifications begin to happen. When the relationships don't pan out, she starts to settle for more of this in relationships. She starts to justify it, and she begins to become numb to the point of what if it leads to whether hooking up or friends with benefits. I've heard girls say that, oh, it's not a big deal. I can sleep with different guys and not be all attached. It's fine. I can be just as sexually liberated as some guys are out there. And this sexual liberation is obviously nothing more than total slavery. But what ends up happening with this numbness, she begins to say it doesn't hurt. It doesn't care. This bonding and breaking, it's not a big deal for me. But what ends up happening with numbness is if you get a burn, initially it hurts. First-degree burns. It stings a little bit. Second-degree burns, it hurts a lot. And the skin, you might have blisters and reddening. It's extremely painful. A third-degree burn is so severe that the nerve endings themselves are destroyed. The skin is black. You can't feel a thing. You could stick a pin into someone's third-degree wound. They couldn't feel it because the nerve endings are dead. So often in relationships, especially on college campuses and young adults, some women have become that numb to the point where they think it's not a big deal because it doesn't hurt anymore to bond and break with guys like this. And when it leads to that point of numbness, at no other time is God's mercy needed in that girl's life. To realize that God can make all things new, that he can restore your heart. What's needed is that hope and that healing to come back to God and know that he can start things over. And the girl's got to keep in her mind, do not ever enter into a relationship looking for the love that only God can give you. Because if she does, then she'll end up disappointed. So if that's the girl's fear and the weakness, I'm afraid I'll be alone, and it leads to that numbness. Where's the man's fear? The man's fear is giving of himself. The man's fear is this commitment of this fear of initiating love and sticking with one girl. What if someone better comes along? Can I just be friends with different girls and not get too serious? There's a fear of giving ourselves. I remember playing basketball at the gym once and telling a guy, oh yeah, we found out we're expecting our third baby. And he's like, third? He's like, you're done, right? He is like, well, you got the boy, you got the girl now, you're done. You have collected the entire set. I can stop collecting now. But there was this mentality that a wife and a kids, doesn't that all just impinge upon your freedom? Well, this is such a false notion of freedom. And a desire to fall for this false idea of freedom, the guys aren't going out and initiating love. They're satisfied with just the hooking up and friends with benefits. Well, if I can have all the benefits of a girlfriend physically without having to commit to her, hey, who could ask for more than that? And so you begin to see this epidemic of these meaningless relationships. In college, I heard one of the best homilies I'd ever heard. A priest gets up in front of about 2,000 college students, and he said, women, I would like you to raise your hand if some guy on this campus asked you out on a date this week. Now, as would be the case on nearly any college campus in America, barely any girls raise their hands. Maybe 4 or 5 girls out of like 1,000 raise their hand. I got asked out this week. And then the rest of the homily, the priest drilled into the guys for failing. And you should have seen the girls, hallelujah!